So let's bring in our panel now. I have a feeling I'm going to have to separate all of these guys. Attorney and TV host Mo Ivory joins us from Atlanta, along with diversity and inclusion expert Buck Davis. In New York, we have radio host and New York City Tea Party co-founder David Webb. So, Mo, I'm going to start with you first.
Sure.
How does President Obama's statement affect the fallout from the Zimmerman verdict, if at all?
Sure, Don. I think that the president's statement gives us a little bit of comfort, and he's the president of the United States, and we want to hear from him. We need to hear from him. It's especially comforting after saying that Trayvon, could have been his son. He would have looked like him. I wanted to hear him say something, so it brought me some comfort, but just a little bit, because I'm still angry. I'm still upset. I'm trying to process this verdict and figure out where we go from here. So it's a wonderful thing that he did that, but we still have more to. What am I angry about? That a murderer got away with murder? No, David, what am I angry about? That you're asking me that question.
No, it's done. It's done. It's done.
Don,
it's done.
Okay,
Why
Don.
are you angry?
I'm angry because a murderer got away with murder. I'm angry because in our system, George Zimmerman's brother Robert just said that Trayvon had plans for George Zimmerman, and that rhetoric is going on. A boy was walking to the store and he was getting a snack and he got murdered, and a murderer got away with it yesterday. That's what I'm mad about.
Well, what do you have to be mad about it? I mean, because listen, people don't like verdicts all the time. And do you think it's productive to be angry? I mean, maybe it's not the right emotion that you're, I don't know.
No, Don, it's the right emotion. No, it's the right emotion.
You're angry.
No, I am angry about it.
Okay.
I'm angry that we live in this society where this kind of thing can still happen, and that we're having this conversation like, oh my gosh, I don't even understand why people are pulling the race card. You don't have to pull the race card. It's out. We live with it every day. We wake up and it's out. We go to work and it's out. We get in our cars and it's out. We go to trials and the race card is out. Nobody has to pull it because it lives outside in America every day. That's why I'm angry. And I think everybody, not just African Americans, everybody should be angry that a 17-year-old boy was murdered in cold blood and the murderer is free.
Okay, all right, Mo, let us get in here. Buck, I promise you're going to get to talk this time. Mo, why are you shaking your head in disagreement here?
No.
David.
Well, look, I understand outrage over not getting the verdict you want. If Mo would actually reach back to the legal premise that exists here, which is Skittles is not a crime, walking is not a crime, a hoodie's not a crime. Again, this is a terrible tragedy. But the incident that happened outside of that. However, let me finish. Where's your outrage?
Let him finish.
Because a young black man was just murdered in Chicago for refusing to join a gang.
Wait,
so I hope you have as much outrage for that.
What kind of comparison?
Stop, both of you.
What kind of comparison is that?
Mo, stop. David, stop. David, do not do that false equivalent. That is
no,
not
I'm not trying to
a fair
equivocate,
comparison.
But outrage.
Yeah, but listen,
I'm not comparing
crime happens all the time, and because a crime happens, it does not mean that you should shift the focus from what happened here. Let's stick to this particular point.
Okay,
so
on this issue then.
Thank you.
On this issue then, the system played out again. We needed to see due process, not outside agitation. He was tried. The jury was picked. They were selected. They had a jury that made a decision on second-degree manslaughter, on second-degree murder, on the manslaughter charges. They acquitted him. The system worked. Now, if you don't like the verdict, I can understand that. But to take it beyond that into the continued hyperbole of it's race, in the dark, rainy night with a hoodie on walking away from him and with a 911 call to back it up, he couldn't even identify him clearly. So he wasn't racially profiling him. This is a tragedy. And a travesty is when you get to the point where race becomes the overwhelming issue rather than the justice system.
But David,
the justice system is broken.
Okay, all right, hold on, guys. You're going to have to let me lead this conversation. So, you have two people of color. I assume both of you are African American. Excuse me for assuming that.
I am. I'm not sure about David.
Two people of color.
Well, I'm a black man. I'm a black man. I'm an American. That's what it is.
Oh, okay. Keep with that.
Okay. So. Girl, you are crazy. So you have two people
I guess
of
I'm not
color
black
disagreeing
enough.
on
Keep
whether
that until you're
it's
driving in your
not,
car and you get
whether
stopped.
it's color, whether it's not, and then you have a white man in the middle, and I'm wondering what he thinks this is all about. But we're going to have to hold that and hear what he has to say after the break. Don't go anywhere, everyone. All right, I'm Don Lemon here in Sanford, Florida. Let's get back now to our conversation about race and about the president's impact on the culture surrounding Trayvon Martin's death and the Zimmerman trial. Is it appropriate for the president to weigh in on a case when there are so many other cases that don't get a presidential mention? So we talked about that. I want to finish up with that before we get to Buck, and because I said I was going to let Buck here. Do you think that it's appropriate for the president to weigh in here, David?
Well, the president had to follow up on his initial statement when he made the comment that if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon. So I expected that. I don't think that should surprise anyone.
Okay. So, Buck, you've heard what David has to say. You've heard what Mo has to say. They two people of color, both feeling differently about race here. How do you feel about race in this particular situation?
Well, let's start with the energy that surrounds this case, which is an indicator of the pulse of the racial problems in this country. The reason why people are stunned, but not shocked. I don't know a lot of people who are shocked at the verdict. I think that this is a very familiar space for black people. I think that this is nothing new for their group, and for many of the people in my fold, it is yet another unfriendly reminder of a justice system that seems to be working so effortlessly for other groups of people and not working as well for people of color. So that is the tension. Now, David, I want to ask you this. Don't you think this is worst case scenario for making assumptions? That he first started profiling him by a couple of data points. And I see this all the time in corporate America, where we take a look at someone's height, weight, skin color, or their sexual orientation, and we begin to use that as an indicator of their capability on the job, as an indicator of their potential. So you take that same filter and you apply it to this situation, and he's on some level, David, he has predicted criminal behavior. Wouldn't you agree, David?
He didn't profile a black man. I'll answer your question, and if you listen to the 911 call, then you get the answer that he wasn't even sure of it. Two, whether he profiled him
David,
as...
he wasn't sure he was a black man?
He told us that he thought he was black.
Here. He wasn't sure
was not
a
sure
black
in his 911 call, except for the NBC edit, which tried to portray it as black. He said he wasn't sure if he was black or Hispanic. I don't remember the exact words. So he wasn't profiling just a black man. That's part of the false narrative that's being used here. Now, there was a problem in that area, and for better or worse, George Zimmerman made a mistake, in my opinion, by going ahead and profiling some form of behavior from someone he didn't recognize. That was an error. These are two elements.
An error that led to murder. An error that led to murder.
Mo, I'm going to ask you, please, you will get your turn, okay? But I think you're being disingenuous about that. He wasn't sure of the exact ethnicity of the person that he was following, but I'm sure he could see the person to figure out that it was a person of color. He said, maybe he's black, maybe he's Hispanic. But I think you're being disingenuous, David, when you're saying he definitely
he was asked by the operator. The operator used the terms first.
Yes, the operator said, I believe he's black.
I don't know. He followed. Now, even that aside, that doesn't speak to the incident which led to the tragic death of Trayvon Martin. That is one incident, and that was a bad decision that led to a worse incident. But the two are separate, both under Florida law, under what happened, because none of us here, or for that matter, likely will ever know, because Trayvon is dead, unfortunately, and George Zimmerman, well, even if he tells the story, can be questioned. None of us will ever know what happened in those key couple of minutes between the two of them.
Hold that thought, a break, and we'll talk more after the break. All right, I'm back now with my panel. And first to David Webb. David, we have to be honest about this. We can't be disingenuous and stop saying things aren't about race when they're obviously about race in this country. Otherwise, when are we gonna get over this?
Look, racism exists, and it will always exist in some form in society. And where it exists, we should take it on and do our best to defeat it. What I don't like is when everything or so many things are made about race when they're not maybe the dominant issue, because that actually marginalizes when we need to take on the issues. Whether it's racism or other forms of bias, we need to get rid of those issues in our society as much as possible. But when we argue about race as the only issue, we do a disservice to the true nature of, frankly, advancing our culture.
Mo Ivory, I'm going to unleash you now because you've been sitting there and you have been very contained. And I know, listen, you are expressing the feelings of a lot of people I've been watching and talking to on social media.
Listen, Don, nobody is saying that every single time something happens it has to be about race. But let me say this. Most times it is about race. So let's not also say, well, you know what? It's not the biggest issue. It's the issue that permeates throughout the way we live our lives in America all the time. This case just brought it out in the spotlight because of the nature of a 17-year-old black boy dying. Let's not ignore what it is, David. Yes, there was a trial. I accept what the jury decided. It was not about racial profiling in this case. It was about what happened at the moment they came together. But that doesn't mean you throw out everything else that happened, that he got into his car, that he followed Trayvon. These are the conversations we need to have. So on the one hand, maybe it's not the biggest issue, but if it is a part of the issue, then it's a problem and it's something that we cannot ignore by just saying that it's not there.
But Mo, I agree. So let's have those discussions when blacks kill whites on the same level.
I can't let you. Buck Davis, I've got to get you in. Can you, this is your profession, take it home for us.
If we're trying to widen the circle of compassion, we need to narrow the focus of self-reflection. And we need to pay attention to our automatic assumptions that we are making about people who are different from us that leads us into a tragedy. So if you're looking for something to do tonight, America, think about what is resonating with you as you listen to this coverage and what's bubbling up for you, because that may be an indicator of a bias that you can get a handle on.
Yeah, like going out and meeting someone who's different than you, and not just meeting but becoming friends with them, going over to their home, you coming over to their house, all those sorts of things, getting to know other people who don't necessarily look like you or just not necessarily in your particular class and station in life. Thanks to my panel. Appreciate it. We're back in a moment.